Under the blistering hush of a dying afternoon, the dusty plains stretched forever, painted with the last gold rays of a stubborn sun, and somewhere between the whispering wind and the distant rustling of dry grass echoed a muffled cry. Trembling with fear and cold, a young girl, wrists rubbed raw, sat tied to a weather-beaten fence where her own father, lost in a cruel haze of drink and rage, had left her like something less than human, tears cutting streaks through the dust on her cheeks as twilight wrapped itself like a shroud around her. Coyotes calling from far hills, the world shrinking into an endless echoing loneliness, and she wondered if this was the moment she would simply fade into the dark, forgotten by everyone, until the quiet clop of hooves broke through her sobbing breaths, slow and uncertain, like the world itself hesitated, and out of that dim horizon came a cowboy who had spent more years alone than he cared to admit. A man haunted not by people but by silence. He heard her scream before he saw her, a sound that cut straight through his ribs, and when he found her tied to that fence, fear glassing her eyes, he felt something clench deep in his chest. For he knew what it meant to be abandoned by the only person who was supposed to love you. So without a word he dismounted, careful and gentle, untying the ropes with hands rough from ranch work but steady as sunrise, whispering soft reassurances until the trembling in her shoulders quieted, and once she was free, she stumbled into his arms like a bird desperate for shelter, shivering as the night crept colder. So he placed his coat around her, lifted her onto his horse, and rode toward the pale lantern glow of his small ranch tucked beneath cottonwoods, a place he had built for quiet, never expecting to share it with another soul. But that evening he stoked the fire high, made her warm broth, listened as she hesitated to speak, voice catching like a brittle leaf, and when she finally whispered pieces of her story, how loneliness had become her shadow, he felt something inside himself stir awake, like embers coaxed back into flame because she reminded him of who he once was before fate had shown its teeth. The next morning, the sheriff listened grimly as the cowboy explained, promising to investigate, and though justice moves slower than the prairie wind, it eventually caught up to the man who had left his daughter to the mercy of coyotes and cold. But in the days while that process churned, the cowboy taught the girl how to brush a horse, how to listen to the quiet hum of land instead of fear, and she blossomed like a wildflower determined to grow through stone, her laughter returning in tiny flickers until one morning it came freely, ringing across the pasture, startling even the birds. At night she looked toward the stars and whispered thanks to whatever force guides lost souls, while he sat on the porch, hat tilted low, marveling at how one scream had changed two lonely lives. And as time passed, neighbors noticed how the cowboy's once silent ranch now pulsed with warmth, how the girl found purpose helping him mend fences and feed livestock, learning strength not from fists but from kindness. And though painful memories lingered like bruises, each sunrise made them fainter. When the court ruled that her father could no longer come near, relief washed through her like rain on parched ground, and the cowboy, never one to pry, simply nodded and offered fresh chores, knowing work could stitch hearts back together. Soon she started reading by the fire, sketching the rolling hills, finding beauty even in cracked earth, and the cowboy learned that saving someone wasn't a single heroic act. It was showing up every day, steady as dawn until fear loosened its grip. Nights softened into seasons and their little ranch became a beacon where broken things healed quietly. Until years later she stood tall, stronger than iron, looking back only to measure her growth, and the cowboy, older but content, smiled knowing he'd given her what he never had, safety, belonging, a future. So when the sun dipped and fireflies blinked across the pasture, she finally whispered, "Thank you for hearing me when no one else would." And he tipped his hat, voice gravel soft, replying, "Sometimes all it takes is one scream to wake the good in a man." Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, if you believe no one deserves to suffer in silence, then please subscribe to this channel so we can keep spreading hope, courage, and unforgettable stories through your screen. Your support helps rescue tales like this from the dark and set them blazing across the prairie of the world. Under the gentle warmth of a late spring sunrise, the ranch buzzed softly with new routines, and the girl who once trembled at every rustle now woke with purpose, learning to saddle horses, sweep barns, and feed bottle calves while the lonely cowboy watched with quiet pride, though neither spoke of the fears that still slept in the shadows of her thoughts. Some nights she jerked awake, breath shaking, echoes of rope and drunken anger pounding in her memory, but each time the soft creak of porch boards told her the cowboy was awake too, keeping watch like a silent guardian. And somehow that small sound gave her courage to breathe again. Until one afternoon a group of neighboring ranch hands rode by, curious about the newcomer, And though their smiles were friendly, she shrank back, heart racing, afraid of hands she didn't know. But the cowboy stepped beside her with a calm, firm presence telling them she was safe here, and they rode off respectful, leaving behind the first hint that the world beyond fear could be kind. Days folded into weeks, and the girl found comfort in chores, humming to horses, learning how to braid reins from old leather, and the cowboy taught her to ride across the open pasture, wind in her hair, a feeling she compared to freedom itself, though she never dared say it aloud. Then the sheriff stopped by with paperwork finalizing her protection, and when she heard her father would never again hold power over her, she broke into tears that tasted like relief instead of pain, the cowboy resting a gentle hand on her shoulder, reminding her she didn't have to pretend to be brave every moment. With safety came growth, and soon she helped fix fences, laughing at splinters and stubborn mules, the ranch shifting from silent to alive, and neighbors began dropping by with pies, worn books, and warm greetings, slowly stitching community into her heart. Late one evening, as fireflies blinked like tiny lanterns, she confessed to the cowboy that she feared becoming like the man who hurt her, and he answered softly that kindness, once chosen, becomes armor, and every act of care she offered the animals and land was proof she was carving a new legacy. Months passed, scars faded, and the girl, once tied like an animal, now raced across fields on horseback. Fearless, her voice no longer small but steady and bright, while the cowboy found his loneliness lifting like mist, realizing that saving her had saved him too. And to everyone watching this story unfold, if you believe healing is real, if you believe kindness can rewrite destinies, please subscribe to this channel so we can continue sharing stories that remind the world where light is found, because your support turns whispers of hope into voices that can't be silenced.